Welcome back. Our guest this morning is Bill Hampton, principal of McCluer North High School and author of a recently published book on secondary school administration. We're talking about community learning programs. Bill, could you give us some examples of community learning programs that get students out into the community?
Well, our high school started this 11 years ago, and we set up a structure where a high school student with his parents and his school advisor could plan ahead, primarily in the sophomore, junior, or senior year of high school, to block out a 9-week period or an 18-week period where for half a day he would not be in the school building but would actually work out as an apprentice in some kind of a job situation. And during that 11 years now, we have almost 400 different community agencies or businesses that take our students as apprentice learners. Several fire departments, police departments, architects, surgeons, veterinarians, lawyers, auto body shops, welding shops, sheet metal shops. You cover the spectrum of the workplace we can do it. It's really been an interesting experience to me to go down to the community learning room and sit in on their, when they have a day in. 4 days they're out as apprentices, 1 day they're in a school.
When does this happen, in the 10th grade or 11th grade? Or?
Well, primarily 11th and 12th grade, because the parents and the students have to work out their transportation arrangements. We're able to transport a few of the students by school bus who have close-in placements. But most of the students' placements can range out across the metropolitan area. And because transportation is a factor, it tends to be older students. But that makes sense. A 9th or 10th grader may have a great interest in doing this, but we have many placements that have certain prerequisites. The veterinarians that we work with really expect the students to have some anatomy, some courses in animal behavior, some courses in mammals, biology, and they also would like them to have chemistry. So
the students really do get real involvement, don't they? I mean, it's not just come here and sit off in the corner of my office and watch me work.
It's almost a total involvement. It's an immersion, and we've got the program set up in a way so that when we enlist a community sponsor, it's very clear what our expectations of them are. And we expect them to really let the student enter into the work and participate in it. And many of the employers, I feel, actually treat them as employees and let them get totally involved. Now, of course, there are work situations where they have to remain as observers and maybe be of some help. A veterinarian doing surgery certainly gets help from a student, but it's primarily observation in a learning situation. But he may be able to help that veterinarian in other ways around his shop. One classic student that I recall just a few years ago was going to drop out of school. He was a sophomore boy who hated school, which is not unusual. No. And his mother, out of desperation, finally ended up in my office crying. What am I going to do? He's leaving and he won't stay in school. And almost out of desperation, I said, well, maybe he'd be interested in our out-of-school learning program, which normally we don't advertise to the younger students. And anyway, she sparked at that suggestion, and we got the boy in, and we started talking about things that he was interested in doing. And it was interesting. He was not the typical picture of the alienated youth. I could see that he cared for his mother, and there wasn't any great difference. He simply didn't like school. And there was no father in the family. And he said that he was interested in police work. And so I picked up the phone, called our community sponsor, and he said that all the police placements were taken, which is pretty typical. They're very popular. And he said, but he did have one firm that trained police dogs. And he said, why don't you ask him what he thinks about that? So I suggested that to the mother and the son, and they both thought, well, that sounds pretty exciting. So we had to work his schedule out fairly well so that his mother, on her lunch hour at work, could come to school and pick him up and get him to the firm that trained police dogs, which was only about 4 or 5 miles away. And it was really almost a miracle what happened, because within 9 weeks, that young man completely changed his perception of school and his whole perception about education. And it really wasn't anything we did. It was what the personnel did at this dog training institution. He went to that site and was very enthusiastic about it, and within only 2 or 3 weeks, they had given him keys and given him responsibility and really made him feel like he was part of the team. But what he realized with those men was that the men who were training those dogs were highly trained, highly skilled people who had tremendous communications ability, most of whom had not only graduated from high school but had some junior college or even college graduates, trained in behavioral psychology and in animal behavior. And he was very impressed by the fact that they'd had so much background, and they almost worked on him daily to get him convinced that he should stay in school and graduate. And he came back a much more motivated student, changing his whole idea, taking many more advanced courses. And I think having some link now between school and the future, that's really a tough link for an adolescent to make. To keep saying to an adolescent, stay in school, it'll pay off later, that's a vague statement.
It's far too vague for many of them. We're going to have to take a break again. We'll be back in 1 minute. Stay with us, folks.